Well, hello. I think somebody was supposed to introduce me, but they obviously haven't turned up. I'm Jackie Smith, and I've been skydiving. Well, I've been in the sport for in and around 49 years now, and I did my first jump at Netheravon in March 1971. Are we getting feedback? And before I joined, I was serving in the British Army with the Women's Royal Army Corps. But before I joined the Army, I was no stranger to competition. I did my Duke of Edinburgh's Award in trampolining. I used to high dive, and I used to swim. My ambition was to swim for England, so I was quite strong in my upper body, which helped with the equipment that we were using. And I was aerial aware because I'd done the trampolining and diving. When I first started jumping, this was the equipment that we used. It was a B4 backpack, which Andrew Hilton has very kindly brought me. This is it here, and this was all the equipment that was available to use. It came in three colours, three tactical colours: white, black and green. White and black were obviously night jumps, snow, or green was for, it hid the grass skid burns when you landed hard on them. I've seen grown men, when they were packing these parachutes, really lose the plot and cry because they were so hard to close. We used to have two metal springed pilot chutes, MA1s, that made the pressure on the cones really, really difficult to open, to use and to close. And the whole rig, this here, and this strap to the front of you, weighed 40 pounds. And I say I wasn't being sexist when I said I saw grown men cry, because there wasn't any other females about for me to compare with. So, but it was really heavy and cumbersome and everything. Boots were mandatory. You had to wear boots. And there wasn't any females around at the time for me to borrow boots. So I borrowed a size 10, and I'm only a size 5 in my shoes. So when I was coming into land, I could reach the middle of the pit from the edge, from the edge there. And that was after the Army Championships. I entered the Army Championships in the beginning of May, and I won the novices event, and I was the first female to have ever competed in it, I think, and I was jumping a round parachute, which is a C9LL, limited manoeuvrability, and you had to do a downwind landing, and these landings were quite tasty in the 17.5 metres that was the limit. So it was crash and burn. Sometimes I landed so hard, I used to shift the pit, pea gravel everywhere. So that was, and jumpsuits, there was no manufacturers of jumpsuits at the time. So the only availability was twin zippers or a flying suit. And I won the Army Championships. At the Army Championships, Major Schofield came up to me and he patted me on the back. And he said, well done, girl, you've got talent, you could be world champion. And I was gobsmacked that he even spoke to me, let alone patted me on the back and said I could be world champion. And even at the Army Championships, the press and the media were onto me because I was a female in this, what was an all-male environment. And I was thrown into the spotlight. I was approached by Major Alex Black of 9th Squadron Royal Engineers if I would do some parachute displays for him. So I did my first parachute displays for him when I only had 32 and 33 jumps. I jumped into a passing off parade in Southwood Camp in Farnborough out of a Scout helicopter. And then I went on further to do about another 5 demonstrations for him into a donkey derby in Kent somewhere, and then I got a phone call off Major Schofield, and he asked me not to participate in any more activity with the Royal Engineers. Because he had something in the pipeline for me. He was trying to get me onto the team, but I didn't know this at the time. And then for a whole year, well, the rest of the year, he was corresponding with the MOD and the WRAC, the Women's Royal Army Corps, to give me permission to join the team as a full-time member. But I came under a lot of resistance. They didn't want a female on the team. Society was different then, you know, there was a lot of stiff upper lips and everybody was really conservative. And the female Queen Bee didn't want me to join the team because they were frightened that the audience would be able to see up my skirt, as if you skydived with a skirt, you know. But the parachute regiment pursued, and then eventually I stayed on the team part-time during 1971. I used to jump with them on a Monday and a Wednesday afternoon at Blackbush Airport. And then on the weekend, I travelled doing DZ control with the team. And so I got a lot of experience on the first year. I have to get a drink of water, I'm a bit parched. In 1972, in the February of 1972, I joined the team as a fully fledged full-time Red Devil. And again, the press and the media was all over me like a cheap suit. And I used to do TV and newspaper, and every day there was press at the team room. We just used to make everything spot clean, everything before the press came, and it was always nice and clean and tidy. And yeah, so 1972, it was a full-on demonstration time. We had about 300 demonstrations booked every year because we were completely self-supporting at the time. We didn't have any financial backing from the military. So everything that we made on the demonstrations went into the team's pot. The only thing that the military gave was the freedom of the chaps and myself to be on the team. We didn't get financial assistance or military vehicles either, so we were out there trying to plug our reputation so that we would get sponsorship. Our bread and butter was parachute displays and static line training because AFF and tandem hadn't been invented then. Throughout the year, we were very busy. We had 29 blokes on the team and myself, and we were split into 3 teams. We had a red team, a black team, and a competition team. And we were still short of people to fulfill our military obligations with the parachute displays, with the amount of displays that we had to do. Sometimes we had 10, 12 displays a day on a weekend. And so we had to split them between however many teams we had. So we had to call on the expert airborne skydiving community that weren't necessarily parachute regiments. So if there were REME Airborne or if there were Royal Corps of Transport and they were available, they used to come and help us to make the numbers up. And we didn't just do one demo a day, we sometimes did 4. I did 5 demos in one day. So it was quite busy. We might have the Manchester Army show that was first thing in the morning and then the last thing at night. Show organiser, very smart, and they would try to get the audience, the crowds in it first thing in the morning, and then we would jump last thing at night to keep the crowds in there, and they spent more money while they were in the showground. During the winter months, we did static parachute displays. Some of the blokes had to go off back to their battalions to refresh with their military career. And they went back, some went to Northern Ireland and some went just back to battalion to refresh weapons and stuff like that. I didn't, because I didn't have a unit to go back to. And we used to do I used to go off with Bob Harmon for 2 or 3 weeks in the winter months, and we'd go to universities and colleges and schools, women's institutes, anywhere. And we pre-planned and always organised the press to come to wherever we were, and then we would stand up on a stage like this and demonstrate. We'd talk about the army, and people were really interested in how we got to where we were. We were recruiting. That's our main role that we were on the Red Devils for. And then we'd demonstrate the complete parachute equipment, and we always had crowd participation. We'd get somebody in off the audience to stand up so that we could get them to try it on, and we'd demonstrate how the parachute deployed. And then we used to show 2 films, Skydivers, This Is a Sport, and another film, I can't remember, but Masters of the Sky. And I knew the songs off by heart, you know. I'm not going to sing it now. And so although we weren't actively parachuting into an arena, we were still actively recruiting, keeping the army in the public eye, and recruiting from wherever we were. A lot of people don't realise what goes into a parachute display. There's all of the pre-planning. You've got to do a recce before each demonstration and make sure that the arena complies with the British Parachute Association's rules and regulations, size-wise, and you've got to make sure there's no anti-parachutist fences and water, roads, and then there's a long journey back after the demonstration. I'll give you an example. We were scheduled to jump into the T2 races into the Isle of Man, and we didn't have an aeroplane. We had to hire the aeroplane from Northern Executive in Manchester. So we drove all the way from Aldershot to Manchester, emplaned at Manchester Ringway, flew across to the T2 races where it was 200-foot cloud base pouring down with rain. So we had to do a low pass, get back to Manchester Ringway, get back in the vehicle and drive back to Aldershot. So we all became masters of canaster and crazy eights back in the back of the vehicle because it was it's like being a roadie. It was long, long days. We didn't get any leave during the during the year. From team starting in late January, we were lucky to get Tuesdays off because we were so busy every weekend doing demonstrations. And then when we got back on a Monday, if it wasn't a bank holiday Monday, we had to clean our boots because we were military. We had to look smart, wash our jumpsuits, clean all the smoke off our helmets. When we were deep into the demonstration season, we all had matching underwear because the orange smoke used to make everything orange and it just wouldn't come out. So we all, I can still smell the smell in my nose now, but we all had orange socks and orange underwear, matching underwear. In 1972, in the March, April, my first official demonstration with the team was into Swansea, and we'd done a recce beforehand, and the anti-parachutist fences and the arena conformed with regulations, but we were jumping by the sea, and so we were all wearing RFD life jackets, similar to what you wear on the airlines, where you just pull the little cord and it inflates. And I was first out we were supposed to do 2 jumps a day for 2 days. And we cancelled the first jump in the morning because it was too windy. And then in the afternoon, we threw the wind drift indicator, and it was still as windy, but we decided to go, typical demo weather. And myself and Steve Slater dived out of the aircraft on the first pass. And as I dived out of the airplane, I caught the top of this backpack on the top of the door, and it bent the top pin around to 180. I didn't know this at the time, but when I came in to pull, we got together, and when I came in to pull, it was a cross pull at the time, and I couldn't get the ripcord out, and I kept pushing and pushing, and nothing would happen. And in the end, I had to deploy my reserve parachute. And the reserve parachute was like this, mounted on my chest, and low slung, so it was mounted from like that level, not up here. That's where the D-rings were to attach it to. So when the reserve parachute eventually went up, it was still windy. I was still going down fast, and I know that because the smoke was coming straight up my leg into my face. And I looked up at the canopy, and it was a round parachute, a round reserve. and I split 13 panels from apex to periphery, so I had less than half a parachute that was letting me down. Unfortunately, I landed in the sea in Mumbles Harbour. As I was coming into land, I just pulled coming into water. I pulled the little cord, and it went phew. But because my harness was so tight, it didn't expand. It constricted, and it pushed all the air out of my chest, and I couldn't speak. I didn't want to speak. I wanted to breathe. I wanted to scream. And then I hit the water, and the water was freezing cold, and it was really, really difficult to sort of get my head back up, because I still had this main container full of parachute that was still in the backpack and weighing me down because it was saturated. It's a long story, but eventually the lifeboats didn't turn up. Steve swam out to rescue me. Steve's in the audience somewhere. But by the time he got to me, he was knackered as well. So he had to hold it. I was holding him up with my jacket. And eventually this little old lady came chugging past in a boat. The lifeboats didn't turn up. And this lady shouted overboard, "Hello, my dear, would you like a lift?" Oh no, we'll wait for the next one to come along, you know. And then it was a real problem getting me onto the boat. Steve could climb back onto the boat easy because he just he'd been stripped off. But this weighed a ton. I couldn't undo my chest strap because it had sort of welded together with the impact of the air from the life jacket. And then eventually they took me back to the docks, and we went to the local fire station, hung the parachute up, hosed it down to get rid of all the salt off the parachute, packed it in the hotel lobby the next day, much to the amusement of all of the other people in there while they were eating breakfast. You know, we were stretched out a parachute. And then the next day we went up to jump, and on the Saturday there must have been 500 people around the arena. But on the Sunday, I was national press. It was on the TV. My dad went into the paper shop. He thought I was dead because I'd been hurtling and plummeting and plunging, and it was on TV and everything. So that the publicity for the team was enormous. It was adverse publicity, but it was really good publicity. And I jumped into the arena the next day, and I think the whole of Wales was around the arena. But it was good publicity. That's a typical, that's my logbooks, typical entries in my logbooks. You know, we just did demo after demo after demo. It was quite hard work and met lots of people. I always used to try and beckon the children when we were packing. We used to pack on the side of the arena just to try and get some, so that they could feel the parachute and get used to seeing, sort of what it was like. And we were recruiting after all, but we used to get lots of silly questions like, well, I suppose they were silly to us, how can you breathe in free fall, and how do you keep going when your rocket stops, and things like that. But yeah, we used to have a lot of crowd participation. In the winter of 1972, we were invited to go out and train with the United States Army parachute team, the Golden Knights, and their team tryouts in Fort Bragg. And we were jumping C-130s and Chinooks, Hueys, and the team's DC-3. And it was just an amazing time because they taught us so much rigging-wise, equipment-wise and technique. It really was beneficial to the team. And on a weekend off, we used to go across to St Mary Glee's drop zone, or what was the other one? Can't remember the other drop zone. Sicily drop zone. And we were jumping out of the Hueys, and the Huey pilot, before we got into the helicopter, briefed us up, and he said, if there's a problem with the helicopter, I don't want you to do it longer than an 8-second delay. Well, we'd never come across this before. He was a Vietnam veteran. And anyway, we got to 9,000 feet, and the helicopter started throwing us about. There's big wide doors on the side. So we'd got out before he'd said off. I won't tell you what the first word was. And we got out and just did an 8-second delay, but we were about 10. He needed the altitude underneath to auto-rotate. so that he didn't chop us up when he was coming down, because he didn't have any control of where he was going to land. He did land very heavy, and I think his skids broke out. But we were about a mile downwind on round parachutes over Fort Bragg with nowhere to land but tall pine trees and everything. So, you know, it sort of keeps you aware what you were doing in an emergency. I've done 5 emergency exits from a aircraft. One was out of a DC-3 on a night jump in Zephyr Hills in Florida, and we only got 1,500 feet and lost one engine. Pilot, you know, shouted off again, and we were out the door. But you have to make that split-second decision. You've got to be aware what to do all the time. What altitude am I? Will I pull my main? Will I pull my reserve? And it's got to be immediate action, because you've got to save your life and everybody that's behind you in the aircraft. We came back from America, and I'd done about 50 jumps out of a C-130, but the team decided to have a PR exercise with it was going to be a big Army, Women's Royal Army Corps, Parachute Regiment and RAF PR week. And they sent me to Bryce Norton to do my military jumping. I wasn't going to get my military wings. This was just going to be jumping military equipment, which was similar to this, but with a different military parachute. And I did 3 days doing synthetic training, you know, that's swinging about in harnesses and PLFs and everything. And after the 3rd day, I didn't jump. I was jumping clean fatigue. Meant I wasn't jumping with the military equipment, Bergen, weapon. I was just jumping similar gear to this. And I was called up to the wing commander's office and told I couldn't jump because there was no toilet on the C-130 for females. Yeah. Yeah, so because there wasn't a female toilet on the C-130, I was pulled off the course, and then I went back to Aldershot, so the PR exercise didn't go ahead. 1973, I was awarded the Red Beret, and I was awarded it by General Sir Windy Gale. He was a Normandy veteran, so it was a real privilege. I was the first female in the world to be able to wear the Red Beret. And again, it was another massive, great big PR exercise. And yeah, I was very privileged to wear it. Still very proud. I've still got my beret. And yeah. And in the winter of 1973, we had a very busy summer doing parachute displays, and I entered my first national championships, and I think I won a style event and maybe came second in accuracy, still on round parachutes. And we were invited to jump into a big international air show in Brazil, and we flew out on an inaugural flight with Varig from Paris to Recife. And then we went to a place called Sao Paulo, where we stayed for a week, and we were scheduled to do 16 demonstrations with the Brazilian Army parachute team and also the Golden Knights. And there was 40 of us. I was the only female jumping into this big international air show in San Jose dos Campos. We were jumping Buffalo and the Hawker Siddeley 748, and the door is like, you know, huge. You can get like 8 standing next to each other. And then the British consulate invited us up to Rio de Janeiro, and they'd scheduled 2 demonstrations, one into the Maracana football stadium, which would have been interesting going into on a round parachute, and also Copacabana Beach here. And with the Maracana stadium demonstration was called off because it was so windy. And then we, the next day, we were jumping onto the beach here, still on round parachutes. And as we flew over the arena, if you like, the square, we had an Irish chap on the team that had injured himself, and he'd been nominated to do DZ control and commentator. Well, we couldn't understand what he was saying, and we were, you know, we lived with him from day to day, so how the Brazilians were going to understand this broad Northern Irish accent. And he had no control over the crowds. He couldn't help it. There was a 6-lane road system, and it was gridlocked with people, cars and people. And as soon as I got out of the airplane, the whole beach went black with people. You just could not see sand at all. And when I came into land, it was bananas. Well, you can see in the other picture, I'm in there somewhere. And the riot police had to come out, and they were shooting and dragged us off. And we were holed up in this hotel. We were holed up in that hotel where we were for about 5 or 6 hours. They would not let us out. I'm not being big-headed. They were shouting, Jackie Smith, Jackie Smith, Jackie Smith, because they thought I was a film star, because they'd never seen a female skydiver or a female soldier in Brazil. And so we had to stay in the hotel for about 5 or 6 hours before we could get out. And our flight was later that night, and we were all worried that we'd miss our flight. And then eventually we snuck out the back door when it was a bit clear, and we were rushed off with the tinted windows. I think it was a stretch limo, and we all got into the vehicle. And they took us back to the airport. And those people on the beach there, they were trying to steal ripcords and little pieces of something, souvenirs. We lost smoke brackets, ripcords. But when we got back to the airport, the saddest loss was Steve had lost his red beret, you know, his parachute red beret, and they'd stolen that. So somebody in Rio de Janeiro was walking about with his red beret on. Is that going to go? 1974 was my first British team. I was national champion in style and accuracy, and that was us. We went to Zolnok in Hungary, which was behind the Iron Curtain. It was a communist country. And when we got to the World Championships, the World Championships DZ had been flooded. So they made a makeshift drop zone on a military airfield. And they wouldn't, us military people were guarded to within an inch of our life because they thought we were spies. Even going to the toilet, there was a guard there, you know. Even on the drop zone, there was guards everywhere. And the drop zone was a makeshift drop zone with a pea gravel pit that was right next to a big tarmac runway, which isn't conducive to good accuracy, especially when the wind's coming across the runway and you get all these big thermal monsters throwing you about. On a team stack, I watched the men's team accuracy one day, and I think Scotty Milne was supposed to come in and land first, but they changed formation in the sky like this because they were going up and down with a downdraft. And I think Scotty was supposed to land first on his team stack, on the team accuracy, and he actually landed last, you know, because there was so much thermal activity. It was really difficult. It was really difficult. There's a young Dane Kenny there on the left, having 40 winks. And Bob Hyatt, John Meacock, Dave Waugh, Scotty, Bob King is in the audience, Dougie Peacock, Deke Wright, Para Edge. There was 4 Red Devils on the team. Myself, Jane Waugh, I can't remember the chap in the middle, Tracy Rickson and Annie McKee. And that was the first time Great Britain skydiving had sent a British ladies team to a World Championships. Doesn't want to work. 1975, there was big change, and the Red Devils led the way. They brought all of the latest equipment over from America, and we were all jumping square parachutes in 1975, and it just made accuracy so much easier because we were facing into wind, and you could be more accurate than a crash and burn on a round parachute. And yep, I was on it. And 1975 again, we did really well at the national championships and the army championships. I think we won everything at the army championships, and we also won everything at the national championships. And again, we were invited to go out to train with the Golden Knights in America, and that was where we did our very first Red Devil 8-way. And that's the team lineup of the Red Devil 8-way. It built to a 10-way because Bill Wenger, who was at the back, he took all the photographs and he docked 10th on it. And yeah, so that was a really big celebration. And then we were all made honorary Golden Knights, which was a massive award. I'm very grateful for everything that's happened. 1976, British team again. I was national champion in style and accuracy, and we went to the World Championships in Wadonia, in Italy. I did really well, but I screwed up on 2 jumps. I think pressure affects you, and I was getting dead centres, but I think I got 1.20 meters, which was rubbish. I may as well pack your bags and go home. But that was us training in Bergerac in France before we went to the World Championships. I wish I'd got this score when I was at the World Championships. When we came back, I went to the Rapper meet in Germany. It was huge. Everybody used to go to it in Europe. And everybody used to do accuracy at the time. There was 70 competitors in this competition here. And I dead centered out. That was the first time I dead centered out the meet. And then there's lots of names on there that you might recognise but not be able to see, like Tony Urigello, Scotty, Dickie Bird, Dane, and whoever. In 1976, I started doing relative work, as it was called then. And that was when the big change came in 1975. At the World Cup in 1975, people was there was only 10-man speed and 4-man. Everything was called man. 4-man, and the 4-man was you had to get 4-man back somersault back to a 4-man again. But after 1975, they decided it had to get a little bit more technical, and that's when sequential, as you know it now, so it was sequential rules came in, and 8-way was introduced into the country, into the world actually. And I decided I wanted to compete on the relative work side, and came out of the army in the February 1977 and went to Pope Valley in California, and I made it onto the Symbiosis team, who were the 4 runners in the sport for like 2 decades. They were very innovative and very forward thinking, and came out of the army and made the British team. And I was also national champion in style and accuracy in 1977, as well as 8-way, and Symbiosis won the 4-way and the 8-way at the 77 nationals, but they were only allowed to compete at the World Championships in one event. So Symbiosis decided we'd go as an 8-way, and the 4-way second team at the nationals went to the World Championships, and it was the RAF team. And we came in 4th. We came in 4th place at the World Championships. There is another team member missing off that photograph. Jeffrey is in the tree that's over to the left-hand side. But we were so busy geeking the camera, we didn't know where he was, and he was stuck up in the tree in the top left-hand side. So Jeff Sanders should be on this photograph here. The only tree for miles and miles, and Jeff had to land in it. In the spring of 1978, I was back on track with my style and accuracy, and I wanted to go to another World Championships because I knew I could do it. I just was focused. I wanted to be world champion. I went to Rayford in North Carolina, sleeping in a tent and doing 6 jumps a day. You're looking at my critique, aren't you? And my strategy was to try and get 10 back-to-back dead centres in my logbook, and that was my goal, to get 10. And then sometimes I'd break it with a 1 centimetre, and I did get to like 29 dead centres, and then I'd get like a 5 centimetre or something, and I came down very heavily on myself and give myself a good talking to and a good critique. So that's why I put the critique here, so absolutely rubbish. But during that training camp, and then I came back for the national championships, won the national championships, style and accuracy again. Went to another training camp back to Rayford. So in the 2 combined training camps, out of the 225 jumps I did, I got 178 dead centres. So I knew I was like peaking at the right time, and you're only as good as your last jump, so you have to keep on it the whole time, and 1 centimetre is just not good enough if you want to go to a World Championships. And then I went to the World Championships, and Cheryl Stearns got 2 centimetres on her first jump. I never look at the scoreboard when I'm competing. I just compete against my own ability, and nothing else but a dead centre would, get me to the World Championships. And I can't tell you the pressure that was on between the 9th and the 10th jump, because there was a couple of days bad weather between jump 9 and jump 10. And on jump 10, I went up in the Antonov, and it was the middle of the day when all these thermal monsters were about. The windsock wasn't blowing true, it was moving around with thermal activity. It was pointing up to the sky, and you know, one windsock that side was going that way, another windsock was going this way. And I was flying around in the Antonov, and I was 5th out. And I watched the first 2 girls go out, and the first girl landed in the middle of the pit. And then the next girl landed, because we used to put one person out on a jump then. And the second girl, her canopy, I think she was a Russian girl, really good at accuracy, landed by the side of the pit. And I could see this from the aircraft. I thought, what the hell's going on down there? And the next girl got out, and she landed that side of the pit. And the next girl got out, and then the co-pilot came down, and he told me, you know, he went like that, 15, 20 minutes to wait. I didn't know what was going on in the ground. We had no ground-to-air communication, and he couldn't speak English. So here's me sitting on 9 dead centres, you know, with the world sort of waiting for this person to get, the first person in the world to get 10 dead centres. And he eventually came and told me I could jump, but it was 35 minutes flying around with all that pressure on me. John Meacock had written out a protest, because you've got to be able to see the windsock, you know, for sort of 30 minutes before you take off. And he'd written out a protest for me, just in case I screwed up, just in case. But yeah, luckily I came in and got a dead centre. Very nervous coming in. My foot was twitching as I was coming in. Had to throw this one out, and I sat down, looked up, and it was 0.00, and it was such a relief. And then I saw John Meacock tearing up his protest. It was not necessary. It was brilliant. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was the British team in '78. Again, some familiar faces in the audience. I actually cried my eyes out when they started playing the national anthem. I just blubbered. I just could not control it. And Britain had never won a medal before, a gold medal, and they were running around trying to find a copy of the national anthem, and the paint on that Union Jack that's at the top of the post there was still wet and dripping. But yeah, it was just amazing. I'm just so privileged to have felt that feeling. I wish I could bottle the feeling and let you all taste what it feels like, because it's just amazing. In 1979, I was back on track with the RW again, which then is starting to become formation skydiving. And also another interesting thing was, at the World Championships, there was a female team from France called Pink Panthers. And the organisers then decided that they couldn't keep calling female teams man. So for man couldn't refer to this ladies team from France. And that was where the word way started coming. So it was for man or for way. I was alternate for the Symbiosis four-way team. And we won the four-way at the Nationals, and we also won the eight-way at the Nationals. But there was 3 foreign nationals on our 8-way team, a Canadian, an Aussie, and an American guy. So we couldn't go to the World Championships as the British team. So Symbiosis went to the World Championships as 4. I was alternate and camera, and so I was left still being national champion in the 8-way, and the second place 8-way team joined me, and we became Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs when we went to the World Championships. And we came 5th in that World Championships, but the Symbiosis 4 won a silver medal in 4-way, and then that was again the first time that Symbiosis, Britain had won a medal. The camera that you can see on my head is what we used to use, and it was called Polar Vision. Up until we started jumping that, nobody else was using anything like it. And I remember Dane carrying this huge television. You know, it wasn't a slim one that we have now. It was a big, full-backed television, you know, just going on holiday to California with my television. But we used to put VHS in this Polar Vision, and once we'd done the skydive, it had a Newton ring sight. You could take the VHS out and plug it into the television that Dane had carried across, and watch it instantly. And from a training point of view, it was fantastic, because prior to that, teams used to use VHS video, and they used to send it off to a developer, and then it wasn't till about 2 or 3 days later that they'd get it back. And then by then you'd done another 20 jumps, and it was too late to sort of critique yourself. So yeah. 1980, I was invited out to Cincinnati to join the Firestone skydiving team. The Firestone team had two biplanes, a balloonist, and 4 skydivers. And we used to jump into a theme park in Kings Island in Cincinnati every night, where the arena was only the size of a boxing ring. There was no room for error. If you look at we were jumping square main parachutes, but round reserves. So you did not want to be under your reserve there. There was open top zoo on the left, with massive, forestation. There was the big rides and everything over to the right. Scaled down version of the Eiffel Tower, which was 320 foot tall, and a big water feature. And then our drop zone was a little boxing ring, and there you can see me just landing on the thing there. But 4 of us in a DC-3 every night. 1979, we went to the British team again. We went to Zephyr Hills for the World Championships, came in 5th in 8-way. But between training we trained at Perris Valley before we came back for the national championships, which we won. 5 of us snuck off, and we had 4 days between the end of training before we went to Zephyr Hills for the World Championships, and 5 of us went off and we jumped El Capitan and did a base jump, and that was just, I know, and at the time we faced a lifetime ban by the British Parachute Association, not British Skydiving. And but before that, I also did style and accuracy on the same year. So I was not only British 8-way champion, I was British style and accuracy champion, and I went to Graz in Austria and won a silver medal in accuracy on my Pegasus canopy, which was not classed as an accuracy canopy. But El Capitan was well worth facing a lifetime ban. Between 1982 and 1986, we got involved with so much stuff. We were invited to do 2 films, The Great North Face of the Eiger Air Race, jumping balloons, Pilatus Porter and Llama, helicopters. We used to take off from the top of the Lauberhorn in a Pilatus Porter, and it was just amazing. And when they didn't need us for skydiving, we were just off skiing, and everything was paid for. Lush hotels. We did 2 of these. We went to Grindelwald the first time, and San Moritz the second time. And came back, I did an advert for Guinness, because it was supposed to enhance the parts that other beers didn't drink. And KP Skydivers, they sponsored Symbiosis, so we had all of the rigs with KP Skydivers. We had sponsorship with Heineken and the Daily Mirror. I continued jumping right through till 1986 competitively. I finished off really my big competition, winning the Rapper Open 4-way meet with a team called Going South, and I also won the accuracy while I was there. And then I was invited by the BBC to jump into the Commonwealth Games in Scotland and open the Commonwealth Games. And the BBC bought our canopies, and I won't say which manufacturer they were British, but we had no input into what parachutes that we wanted to jump into the arena. And they had, I had to fly the Scottish Saltire, so it was a blue canopy with the white cross, and then the Royal Marines, who were escorting me into the arena, were jumping the Union flag. And we got these canopies, and we took them up to Arbroath after the Rapper meet, and we did 4 days of training jumps. We had to put these rigs together, But the bottom skin on these canopies was like crisp packets. And every time we took the canopies to terminal, they would split or they malfunction. I think we had 9 malfunctions between us in the 2 or 3 days that we were jumping there before the Commonwealth Games. And then we flew from Arbroath to Meadowbank Stadium for the actual demo, and 102 million people watched it, and we had to jump it. It was blowing a hoolie, the cloud base was low, but I was opening the show. What do? You have to jump, you know. Sorry, BPA, we're getting out low. And yeah, so we jumped, but these canopies performed, they opened. But when I came over the arena, the stadium, it was blowing so hard that there was a lot of curl over. And when I came over the arena, the wind hit the top of my canopy and it twisted it into a bow. I have got the video, but it's too long to show. And I came in really, really heavy. The lads that had landed before me thought I'd broke my back, but you know, I jumped up, made of sterner stuff than that. And the lads hoisted me up and put me on their shoulders, and we had to do a team lineup and everything. But after it was these canopies that were awful, and then after the team lineup, when we got in a team vehicle to drive off, we just ditched these canopies that were in a dustbin in somewhere in Edinburgh. We didn't know where they were. Yeah. These are a few of my achievements. I got my gold lanyard. I can't see that one because I haven't got my glasses on. Gold lanyard for my Parachute Regiment Award for completing 1,000 jumps. Won a gold and silver medal in World Championships, and I won a gold and silver medal in World Cups. These are my national championships and British teams. Now, I have to mention this one here because not many people know about it. It's the bottom one, 1984. We had a British 8-way team, and we trained and we went to the World Cup in La Palise in France. And I think we only did 2 jumps, but us British girls won it, and they awarded the trophy to us. So we owned it, you know, we took it. And I'm not sure if many people are aware that we actually won that. We were called 8 girls, we were called Octopussy. Very apt. I've added up, I went through my logbooks. I'm a few logbooks short, and so I did 54 demonstration jumps before I had 200 jumps. My 200th jump was into the Romsey show, and I met Lord Mountbatten. That was my first royal I'd ever met, you know, and I was like overwhelmed because I'd met this royalty. I did 925 round parachute jumps and 4,750 jumps in total, and 459 demonstration jumps. So a lot of them were with the Red Devils. But while I was in Ohio, combined with the jumps that we did into Kings Island every night, I did 112 jumps. We jumped into the Dayton Air Show and a couple of other little places that we jumped into. So yeah, there's a lot of demonstrations, isn't it? And I didn't want to make you jealous, but I jumped at 58 jump ships, you know, Chinooks and C-130s and everything. I was awarded the Royal Aero Club gold medal. Symbiosis won the Prince of Wales trophy. In 2013, I was inducted into the Skydiving Hall of Fame. And in 2018, thank you. 2018, I was given the Jim Crocker Trophy, which was a lovely achievement because Jim Crocker was still alive. He died exactly a year ago last week. So I saw him before he actually died. But I was so pleased to see him because he wasn't in a good way before he died. I've got one person to thank for this, and that's Major Peter Schofield, who was the team commander of the Red Devils, who opened the door for me when I was a budding student. And he was such a kind man. And he got me onto the team. I owe the Red Devils and the Parachute Regiment for allowing me. He opened the door, they let me in, and without him, I wouldn't have achieved any of this. You know, it was just amazing. I've got a little video. I want to show you a bit of video of me. I want to show you old school meets new school, because I went into the tunnel for the first time, and fortunately I jumped with Storm, and so this is 2 minutes long. I'm in the red jumpsuit. So that was old school meets new school. The hardest part of that thank you very much. Thank you, thanks. The hardest part of that was getting out of the tunnel, because it was the first time in, and I want to know, does my bum look big in red? Thank you, everybody. You've been lovely. Thank you. Thank you.